never like gave orders. I never had to say, hey, everyone, here's what we're doing this. I never had to say that. The caveat is we're in a gunfight and, I need you to take your element over that building.
Yeah.
And even then, it's a strong suggestion because I might say, Jordan, take that building over there. You might look back at me and say, negative.
Mm-hmm.
The reason you're saying that to me is because there's something that you see that I don't see.
Yeah.
So the idea of barking orders and that idea that the military or any organization can be run through authoritarian dictatorship, look, you can make it work for a little while, but it's not a long-term solution. And that's what we've got to watch out.
The solution to your problem is not going to be found in the problem. It's not going to be found in there. You have to get out of the problem so that you can look at it, make an assessment, and you can assess how to solve the problem or whether you need to solve the problem or not. I mean, there's a lot of things in my life right now where I shrug my shoulders and go, okay, it's okay. Oh, someone's saying this. Okay, roger that. Carry on. No factor. Move on. And then occasionally you go, okay, this is something I need to contend with. This is something I need to deal with. This is something I need to shape or adjust or move or solve, to use your word. And the reason I laugh when I say that is because problems, you have to get in there. But if you take a step back, you can usually say, oh, little adjustment here, a little adjustment there, and that thing's going to sort itself out.
War is a nightmare. War is awful. It is indifferent and devastating and evil. War is hell. But war is also an incredible teacher, a brutal teacher. And it teaches you lessons that you will not forget. In war, you are forced to see humanity at its absolute worst. And you are also blessed to see humanity in its most glorious moments.
I think this is where I initially learned this, because as you're coming up in the military, you're going up in the ranks and you're getting moved into more positions of responsibility and you're going out and conducting operations and all those things that you do inside the military in your career. And what I found more than anything else was where I got gratification and what felt like I actually did something good was when I'd see a guy that I had worked with, that I had mentored, that I had trained, when I'd see them step up and excel. And be able to achieve things and be able to accomplish things.
Yeah.
That was more gratifying than me doing it myself. And so I think that I started to notice that's what really...
When did you notice that? How old were you?
Probably 29, 30, something along those. So I was in a leadership position. I started to have people working, that were my direct reports. But I realized, I can really help this person. Like, they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And inside the military, inside the SEAL teams, it's like, there's a mission that you're going to do, and there's a certain way to conduct that mission. And this person that had only been doing this job for 3 years might not know that. And I knew it. And there's not too many things that you know really well, where you go, I can show you how to do this.
Yeah.
And instead of just saying, hey, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I can show you how to do this, you can follow my lead. Instead of having that attitude, it's an attitude of like, hey, you're going to be just as capable as I am. At some point, I can help you along the way.
More even.
Yeah, that's the goal, is to make them more capable. And this is something that comes from jiu-jitsu as well. In jiu-jitsu, if you and I train jiu-jitsu and we've both been training the same amount of time, sure, it'll come down to like who's bigger and stronger. But I realized, hey, there's always someone has been training longer than me, and they're going to be able to beat me. That doesn't make them a better human being than me. It just means that they've been training longer for me. And that applies to just about everything, right? So if the skill of being a SEAL and planning a mission, I might be better than you right now, but over time, I should be able to train you, and you should be able to, like you said, get better than I am. And so I felt that left the biggest mark on my soul of being able to help people out. And then when I got out of the military and I started kind of teaching the same leadership principles that I had learned, and then I started getting that same feedback. And then with writing kids' books, like that was a whole new level. When you have a kid that comes up and says, hey, I did my first pull-up, or I got an A on my math test, or I learned all my times tables, and the parents like have tears in their eyes and saying thank you.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where you and I had a discussion about the science and the practical application aligned. So my original experience with detachment was, and this is one of those moments where, I said a lot of times things are just small moments over time and you make a little adjustment. This is one of those moments in my life, and I wrote about leadership strategy and tactics, where I recognized like in a moment what detachment was and how helpful it was. I'm on an oil rig doing a training mission. My whole platoon is in a skirmish line looking at a large area of the oil rig that we're supposed to be clearing. Again, this is not combat. This is in the 90s. There's nothing going on. We're just doing training. And I'm standing in this skirmish line. And by the way, I'm the youngest and most junior guy in my platoon. And I'm standing there looking down the sight of my weapon. And I'm waiting for someone to make a call and tell us what to do. And I wait for 5 seconds, and I wait for 10 seconds, and I wait for 20 seconds, and no one's saying anything. And we're waiting for a leader in my platoon to make a call, to tell us what to do, tell me what to do.
War teaches you about sorrow and loss and pain. And it teaches you about the preciousness and the fragility of human life. And in that fragility, war teaches you about death. But war also teaches you about brotherhood and honor and humility and leadership. And unfortunately, war teaches you the most when things go wrong. And for me, one of the most impactful lessons that I learned from war was in the spring of 2006 in the city of Ramadi, Iraq, which at the time was the epicenter of the insurgency, where brutal and determined terrorists ruled the streets with torture and rape and murder. And it was in one neighborhood of that city during an operation that I was in charge of when all hell broke loose. We had multiple units out on the battlefield fighting the enemy. We had friendly Iraqi soldiers. We had U.S. Army soldiers and U.S. Marines, along with small elements of my SEAL team. And then the fog of war rolled in with its confusion and chaos and mayhem, and with its gunfire and enemy attacks and screaming men and blood and death. And in that fog of war, through a series of mistakes and human error and poor judgment and Murphy's Law and just plain bad luck.
But there's one more area, right, between resistance and insubordination. And I believe that this other area is disrespect. You got someone that's throwing comments at you. You got someone that's undermining you. You got someone that's making you look bad. You demand respect, you lose respect. So when someone's being disrespectful to you and you just demand respect from them, their respect for you doesn't go up. But if you were to say, let's debrief. I got a question the other day about how to handle insubordination. How do I handle insubordination? And I think as you go to answer that question, you actually have to think through some things. You have to think about this. What is insubordination? What does that mean? Is it, oh, they're not following my instructions? Is it that they're asking some pointed questions? Is it some level of sabotage that you can see happening? I think you have to clarify what you mean by insubordination, because when we hear the word insubordination, when I hear the word insubordination, what we think of is some outright mutinous behavior or just defiant rebellion.
A horrendous firefight broke out. But this firefight, it wasn't between us and the enemy. This firefight, tragically, was between us and us. Friendly forces against friendly forces. Fratricide. The mortal sin of combat. And the most horrific part of war. And when it was over, and the fog of war lifted, one friendly Iraqi soldier was dead. 2 more were wounded. One of my men was wounded. The rest of my SEALs were badly shaken. And it was only through a miracle that no one else was killed. And it was reported up the chain of command what had happened. That we had fought and wounded and killed each other. And when we got back to base, things didn't get much better. There was a message waiting for me from my commanding officer. And it said, shut down all operations. It said that the commanding officer, the master chief, and the investigating officer were inbound to my location. And they told me to prepare a debrief to explain exactly what had happened on the operation and what had gone wrong.
Right. Let me ask you this. When you hear the word insubordination, you're not thinking, you're thinking something pretty extreme, right?
UCMJ violation.
Right.
Yeah, this is a major deal.
And I think that type of insubordination doesn't really happen that often. I mean, it just doesn't really happen that often. I think most of the time when people use the word insubordination, what's really happening is what I said earlier. Maybe, someone's not following instructions exactly. Maybe someone's asking questions in a group, where it's like, why are we doing this? That type of thing. And I don't think that's insubordination. I think that's resistance. I think that's what I'm going to call resistance, which I think is a normal thing that's going to happen to you as a leader. There will be resistance from your team. You have to expect it. You have to embrace it. And when I feel that type of resistance, I have to think to myself, guess what? I'm getting this resistance because of me. It's my fault. That's what's actually happening. I haven't explained something correctly. There's some part of this that they don't understand or that I haven't explained well. There's why am I having a problem convincing them of the plan? Why? That's got to be on me. Why can't I communicate properly? Why haven't I built a better relationship with this individual? Are they giving me this resistance because I've become too familiar? Do I have a relationship that's too close? Have I become a friend instead of a leader? So all those things require me to ask myself, okay, what mistake did I make and how can I fix it? How do I fix it? Do I build a better relationship? Or if I've got too close of a relationship, do I slowly reinstate boundaries? If I feel like they are not buying into the plan, do I let them come up with a plan so they get buy-in? If they're not understanding my communications, how do I make my communications more simple and clear? So all those things are my fault. And all those things are a way to stop and that's that attitude, that resistance is what I think people often refer to as insubordination. Now, like you said, if you're talking, uncontrollable terror inside your team, then you have to take actions to discipline and remove them. This isn't even really that much of a question, right? If you've got someone that is insubordinate, then you need to discipline them and you need to counsel them and you need to remove them. Either they fix themselves or you remove. You need to escalate the escalation of counseling very quickly. Okay, in the SEAL teams, for example, it is very seldom that someone gets kicked out of the SEAL teams for insubordination. I mean, I can think of maybe one or two examples in my whole career. Bad behavior, yes, but bad behavior that they did something stupid and they would come back and apologize. They weren't insubordinate. They just did something stupid. Very seldom would someone actually have straight up insubordination. But there's one more area, right, between resistance and insubordination. And I believe that this other area is disrespect. Right now we have another area of disrespect. You got someone that's throwing comments at you. You got someone that's undermining you. You got someone that's making you look bad. So, and I think that can be mistaken for straight up insubordination. Who the hell's Babin think he is? Trying to call me out and right in front of everyone. Like that, team guys would do dumb things to each other. Like it's dumb, and sometimes they could be disrespectful. And if someone's sensitive, that can sting somebody. I'm just thinking of for some reason I thought of vehicles. We're always doing dumb things in vehicles. But let's say you had one of your guys and they're going to pick you up, at a restaurant or pick you up in front of the barracks. And so, they're sitting there waiting for you, walk up and they pull ahead a little bit. You walk up to the door again, they pull it, right? That could be, you're joking around, cool. But there could be a level of hostility there that actually makes that disrespectful. So we can have situations where people are being disrespectful and you have to address it. Now, once again, as we just talked about, when we address it, the initial approach shouldn't be an attack. I mean, to start out with, you better stop disrespecting me. If that's where you start,
You can win that tactical battle, right? You can, that person might, roger that, sir. Where do you end up though? You end up, when you demand respect, you lose respect. When you demand respect, you lose respect. So when someone's being disrespectful to you and you just demand respect from them, their respect for you doesn't go up. But if you were to say, hey, listen, man, obviously I must not be doing something right because I respect you and I respect your experience, but I'm not feeling any mutual respect back in my direction. And I'm thinking there must be something I'm doing wrong. What do I need to do different that I can earn your respect? That approach is going to be infinitely better than you better just give me respect. And then when they respond to you, to your first, to the first topic that you brought up today, when you ask them what you can do better, when you ask them for feedback, you better listen to it. You listen to it. Nod your head, listen, and then actually make adjustments. Whatever that thing is. Now, is there a dichotomy here? Can we go too far with this? Yeah. Am I sitting here saying, hey, you can just let people walk all over you? No, absolutely not. You have to listen to them, but you got to be confident. You got to take things on board. And then once you've taken these things on board, you've got to see if you can actually start building a relationship. If they start to come in your direction, or do you have an actual bad apple, right? Which you can have a bad apple. And if you have a bad apple, then you start the escalation of counseling and you either win them over or you have to get rid of them. And what's interesting about this, and you've referred to me multiple times in this particular topic. We'll know a guy who is a SEAL who maybe got in trouble, a troublemaker, a problem causer. And you've said to me like, hey, Jocko, if that guy worked for you, this wouldn't have happened. And I actually have documented cases where I had guys that actually worked for me that were freaking awesome guys, would do absolutely anything I asked them to do, were totally professional in training, totally professional in combat. And when they worked for me, they were freaking awesome. And then they worked for someone else and they would get in trouble. And I had pretty significant punishment administered to these individuals. And that means that leader, instead of developing a relationship and trying to make adjustments and trying to get them on board and showing respect, they didn't do that.
Those particular individuals you're talking about too, we were talking about very strong-willed people who are default aggressive, and they're not. I don't have time for someone that they see as a weak leader. They don't respect. So, yeah, I reacting extremely poorly. And what you're talking about is just de-escalating the situation.
Totally de-escalating.
Whereas if you demand respect, you're escalating that situation versus actually let's de-escalate. I'm thinking about that as you're saying it, and we have to correct this misperception all the time. And I think a lot of people, when I hear those kind of comments from leaders that we work with, which happens a lot, they think that in the military, it's just a bunch of Terminator robots that are going to just carry out orders and do exactly what you say with no pushback whatsoever. And so they don't know how to react to that. Like, well, they just need to do what I say, rather than, okay, they're human beings, so I need to actually explain it to them. And if you can turn that around, I mean, that's the power of extreme ownership, and recognize, okay, I need to do something better to actually get that person on board. One of the things I've learned from you is, like, when somebody's complaining, you should actually listen to them. And it's amazing how you can either defeat their arguments if you're complaining to me and you're just saying something totally off the wall that makes no sense whatsoever, then I can very easily explain why we shouldn't do that. Or maybe I don't think it's the right call for the team. And I mean, I should be able to make that very obvious if it is that obvious, but also you might be bringing up something and very often is the case, you're bringing up some very valid points. And even if you just give me 3 points and one of them is valid, at least now like, I'm listening to you. You leave that conversation with, like, well, finally, like, they understand, what I bring to the table. So it feeds your ego, and I can make some little small change or minuscule thing that could help you.
It's crazy, but I'm sure there's someone thinking, yeah, but sometimes you gotta just, and I'm oddly enough, I'm trying to think through I was only in for 20 years. I'm trying to think through all those years of the times that I just had to, get rid of somebody because they were insubordinate or they were disrespectful or whatever you want to call it, someone that I couldn't get through to get them on board. And I can't think of any. I think the number is 0. So try a little bit harder.